It is a pleasure for me to once again introduce my good friend John Farrar. He is somebody I've known for, I think, 20 years in the CF world. I've been an entrepreneur with success and failure. I've worked for a bunch of startups. To me, that's the exciting life. John has written books. He's taught classes online. And we've talked for a number of years, and he was very opinionated about what he liked and what he didn't like and what they should do for the software to be more meaningful and teach a better class from the student's view. And a lot of the things he talked about made sense to me as someone who buys one or two classes a year, although I've never taught one. I was pleased to see that he is committed enough. He quit his job and is writing the software to, as he calls it, disrupt learning online. And I've seen a little sneak peeks here and there of screenshots, but I'm very interested myself if he can make online learning better. And I think he can. We all benefit. So take her away, John.
Hello from Michigan, wherever someone is watching tonight or later from around the world. Hopefully the resolution is good. This is a preview, the first exposure of my project to the public. So that's what Open Learning Server is about. And let me hit this right off, because I used to have a framework I wrote for Cold Fusion for software developers, and you used to hear this comment often. What? Yet another framework? Well, when it comes to learning servers, isn't the same thing true? Another learning server? Really? Why? Like Rick said, I have created online courses, and I spent a lot of time looking at online course servers. And I do that because I've taught and because I've taken classes. First thing I want us to do is to step back and ask, are we successful at teaching online? I would say yes, absolutely. Online teaching and learning would not be growing if there were no success. The question I have is, how long do you keep your smartphone before you get tired of it? How many nights do people keep eating the same thing night after night before they get tired of it? As a culture, all of us tend to get tired of stuff, but there's some things that we keep coming back to. All of us have those things we come back to. Well, the same way when it comes to learning, there's some fundamentals that will always make learning and teaching work. And what those fundamentals are is probably not 3D glasses, although I am really looking forward to when 3D gets to that level and comes down in price. It is definitely not ChatGPT. It's a great technology, but ChatGPT, it's too soon. It's too raw. Basically what we're having right now, I call this a AI bubble. And you're seeing people surge into it just like they surged into the internet. And I predict there will be successes. The internet didn't die, but a lot of companies are going to bust on this. So when we look at online learning, I'm not headed towards ChatGPT. I don't think it's time. That doesn't mean we can't get there in the future. It means I'm aiming differently. So what I want to do, let's see, I would have three guys here that might participate. Robert G, I don't know what that G stands for. I know Rick, and what I'm looking for is someone to discuss a couple of principles here. So maybe if Nicholas, Robert, and Rick want to join in, you are very welcome to join in to make this a little more organic. Now, as we look at our online learning journey, what all of us have done, we see that we're definitely making progress. 20 years ago, when Rick and I first met, online video, it was a joke. It was, I would say online video compared or was worse than watching moonshot videos that were supposed to be broadcast live. We're making progress. We have HD video, we have streaming services that are on demand. It's absolutely incredible. And YouTube, who would have ever dreamed that all of us can post as many videos as we want for free? The times have definitely changed, but there's still some road bumps. Who's taken a course that hasn't got frustrated? Well, I will be talking about some of those frustrations and some of the solutions, and we'll take a look at that. COVID classrooms, boy, didn't they reveal some of the weaknesses, some of the areas where we could grow better. And in the remote students beyond COVID, before and after, if things are getting better, is online learning? Now, here's a really good way to put it. If you ran a business and someone gave you a resume and most of their qualifications were certificates from online classes, would you hire them? When we go and take a class, some classes they offer online and they're like $300, some of them are $2,000, some more. Would you take those classes because people have great testimonies? Well, let me say up front, that's one of the things I hope we can change. What we do typically is we try and weigh the testimonies. Let's see, there's a difference between gambling and investing. If all I have is testimonies of successful people, but I don't have any evidence that most of the students that take this course are successful, then giving them my money for this course is a gamble. How do we change things so that if I'm a teacher, I can show the students that most of the people who take this course actually get success from the course? I mean, when you buy courses, is that how it happens? Yeah, if you guys could throw in the comments, is that your experience when you buy a course? Yes or no? Do you have proof that the people who take the course are successful? If you know what the chat is.
Yeah, I got a chat. I'll just come on here and say that no, I don't know if they're successful, and at the same time, there's a very wide variation in courses. I think if they're the right courses, that could be valuable. But you can also say they have a college degree. Just because they got a college degree doesn't mean they know how to program. I've interviewed people. There's a wide variation. I want to look at what they've actually done, and if I can see that they've successfully built a project, I have a lot more confidence than either a college degree or a certificate.
Well, I'll tell you this. If a teacher, I'll tell you how they do it after. I'm proposing we do this. You'll see it in the flow. But there's a way, if we do this when we're creating courses, we can actually solve a lot of the key road bumps and actually, as we go along, start getting statistics as to how good the course is doing. And even someone says, I'm interested in taking your course. Hey, take this quick survey, not because I'm going to figure out how to market to you, but our course has strengths and weaknesses, and depending where you land in the survey, we may, get this, recommend you take somebody else's course that match your needs better. Imagine if someone actually did that. I learned that from my father. My father did that in insurance, which blew people's minds, and he had people that would come to him first because they trusted him. But before my father did that, He did it as a Navy recruiter. And my mother tells this story. She was downtown. This is in Rumford, Maine. And she was sitting in a waiting room with some people. And this guy was telling a story that used to be, I don't remember if he's in the Army or Marines, but he used to be in the military. And he says, and they asked him why he chose that service. And he says, "You're not going to believe me." And they said, "Well, tell us." And he told the story about my father, when he sat down and talked to them, thought he'd fit a different service better. He took him down and he enlisted in that service. And they're like, the guys around him like, "Okay, you're lying. This is made up." And he said, "No, it's true. My mother happened to be sitting there." So she says, "Do you happen to remember your recruiter's name?" He said, "Yes, it was Al Farrar." And they said, "No, I still don't believe it." And she looked at him, she said, "You better believe it. Al Farrar is my husband, and that's how he did business." Zig Ziglar used to have a phrase: if you help enough other people get what they want out of life, you will have what you want out of life. You don't have to step on people to get ahead. Winning doesn't mean defeating the competition. It means serving your audience. So, to me, other people have a different definition. I'm giving you my perspective. My father tainted me. So, what I would like to do is get some participation, online learning, whether you put it in the chat section or whether you share with it verbally. You're welcome to come on audio. We're going to use the Scrum style approach here when people do development teams. If you've taken online courses before, give me some things that went well. I need some Jeopardy music.
Yeah,
Something
good evening, John.
Yeah.
This is Robert. My position here at the university is as a research engineer, but I also help with teaching classes in electrical engineering.
Nice.
And we've been massively impacted by the whole COVID learning issues.
My electrical engineering, Robert, is rusty, but I was a flight simulator technician in the Navy. So that's actually my career start was down your line.
Yeah.
I'm just a Benedict Arnold. I left the focus. So.
I also work down at the Marine Hydrodynamics Laboratory. We just hired a young fellow who is going to be training up on the National Instruments LabVIEW. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I said was, "Okay, you're going to do the online learning, and you're going to get your certificate, and then I'm going to give you a project to do, and you have to do that project. And you're not done with your probationary period until you have the certificates and you've also successfully completed the project."
Sure.
Because the online learning can, as you say, there can be road bumps, and there can be, different online learning courses will have.
Well, I have 3 sections. Let me invite you to, I have mixed reviews and what could have gone better. So you're welcome to share any of the 3, and I will shift back and forth between them.
So I'm interested to hear your perspectives and comments, and try to kind of refine my approach with this young fellow.
Sure. Rick, you and I, don't name the course, please, but you and I took a course that we bought at the same time.
Yep.
I'm going to give you a mental challenge. Share some of the road bumps that we hit without sharing what it is, or if you fail, you will not be fined, but
okay. I think that we purchased it and the course was nowhere near done. I think it was maybe 15% done. We wanted to start learning, and here we had to wait 3 or 4 months or something for it to be completed. The instructor,
Yes, and it was
good
finished
instructor.
today. No kidding, you guys. It's
Yep.
been like 3 months and it was finished 2 days. So I thought that was really ironic.
The instructor was a good instructor, but I don't think he was teaching what he thought we needed to know. And there's some major areas that were new, and he didn't touch them at all because I guess they didn't interest him. And he had one particular area where he had something, I would say, unconventional in how you did something because he liked a certain library. And that's okay, but teach it the conventional way as well. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And,
so it was a mastery course, but it was actually narrow.
yep.
So it's a name that would make you buy a course, but it wasn't a course that matched the name. And it was a good course.
Yeah, I think that compared to other classes that I've taken, it would have been way, way down the list. But when you're doing stuff that's new technology, sometimes there's one class, and if you want to learn it, you got to step forward or wait, 6 months or something for another class to pop up.
By the way,
they told us we were getting the lowest price, and they've continued to discount it. Some cases 4 months after, cheaper than what we paid, and that just annoys me. Don't promise me I've got the lowest price if I buy by Friday, and then don't deliver on it. And they have a lot of other courses, and I'm very, very reluctant to ever take a class from that school again as a result of what happened. I don't know how you feel, but.
So these are just things with this course. And by the way, as I do this, this is part of how I would teach. There's 2 aspects to teaching. One is teaching live. One is teaching pre-recorded. What I'm actually doing is I have a Wacom graphics screen tablet here. And I'm not sharing that screen tablet. I'm sharing a different tablet. And this is sort of like PowerPoint. It has the presenter view and it has the regular view that you would look at here. And you see it's actually taking the, as I'm writing, it's storing it in here. And I can swap back and forth between the slides, and you see it's storing the writing right on the slide. So just for anyone who's interested, for all the guys who are here tonight, and we'll do it for some more afterwards, but one of the first courses I'm going to put out is on this slide dev, and I will show how I'm doing this in the course because this is part of teaching. And PowerPoint, it's nice. Keynote, it's nice, but since a lot of what I plan to teach is code oriented, this has some extra features and it lets me do stuff more the way I'm used to. And I think this is pretty good presentation. So what about mixed review areas? I'll hit some of these. I see a lot of technologies that are really dug into this new trend of gamification and badges and stuff. When that matches your business model, that's great. When it doesn't, I don't want it available. So that I'm sort of mixed review and that it depends. Another thing is I just completed, it's one of my side interests. My wife and I both on the side do personal financial coaching so people can learn to win with their budgets. One of the courses that I'm actually going to produce with my open learning server is a course on budgeting for freedom, because I found most people when they budget, they feel like they're in bondage. because they don't know how to budget effectively. Well, my wife's also going to put a course online using our software on whole grain bread baking. So this is not just aimed at technology. This is the course where I'm creating is actually more broad. So there's gamification. Here it is. I was trying to remember why I hadn't put this somewhere else in my deck. Would you hire someone? Remember when I mentioned that earlier? Would you hire someone based on them having a certificate? I mean, what does it really mean? You tell me if I complete your course, I get a certificate. I don't think someone's going to hire me because I have that certificate. We need a different approach so that when someone completes the course, they actually have some confidence in these things. Well, things that have gone well over the years, rich content, video players, bookmarks. I mean, we don't have this set in there yet, but group classes. If you're in a business, you want to know that you can put a whole class in there once. If you're at a university, well, managing assignments as a teacher, reviewing them, those are really great features. Those are things we already have. Course builder, and like what I'm doing right here, live lessons. Well, there you go. No, these pens don't have spell correctors in there. I don't have that feature being added, but so, integration, commerce. So a lot has gone well. There's some things that are middle of the road, and then we're still hitting road bumps. Now, this road bump thing is what I want to talk about. What will we change? Okay, I'm going to give you a little list here. I'll tell you that my course concept has 3 areas that I want to change. This is what I'm focusing on for my minimal viable product. Timely review. When we create courses, let's think about it this way. If someone made a car for you and they had another technical person review the car and they roll it off the factory line, do you feel like that car is ready for you to drive? I mean, how many clunkers? Can you guys name some different cars over the years that have been clunkers? Anybody here old enough to remember the cars that had aluminum engine blocks?
Hey, I owned a Pinto.
Yes. If you went to the gas station and put in a gallon of gas and filled it up with oil, because that's how bad it burnt it. It was horrible. I'm exaggerating, but sadly, not badly. Well, that engine, they didn't actually take it on the road and test it. And all kinds of us bought it. It's crazy. How could that get to the market? And that's what happened is your end users, they didn't have people actually going out and using them. Anybody here ever heard of a product called, let's see, Febreze? When Febreze hit the market, nobody was buying it, and they couldn't figure out why. And so they started doing some tests with end users, people who were buying them. And they went to this one lady who was in a hotel, and she would clean a room. And after she got done cleaning the whole room, she would spray the room with Febreze to finish it off. And they said, but when you first go in a room, it sometimes smells like people were in here. She said, yes, but for me, Febreze is how you finish a room. And what they found out doing this was the end user thinks and uses their stuff differently than they do. Guess what? When we create courses, when we write books, that's a big deal. You see, this right here, the timely review, that's the key. A user is different than a technical expert. You and another technical expert, I've written books that are published in technical subjects, and I've had technical reviewers jump in there with me. But you know what you never have when you do that? You and the technical expert both have the same knowledge. So if there's something you assume as you walk through the path, guess what happens? Two experts walking through the path don't realize that they've skipped teaching something. That's the reason for timely review, and I will show you basically how we do that. I'll go ahead and jump over because I don't have any. I'll be over here. So this is my open learning server. I'm working on it. I don't have these the same height yet because I'm not at that level and I'm not worried about it. But this is an example of different courses. This budgeting fundamentals course that I'm making. You see here, it doesn't let me in it because that's actually created by a different username. But this course up here, see, that one's one my wife will be doing. That's a different username. But if I'm making a course on VS Code fundamentals, here I have the edit button, and I can get in here and edit all this information. I can come in here and I can add another unit. I can add lessons to the units. So it has all those standard pieces. And one of the reasons you actually want to get students into your courses is because as the students go through your courses, there's a gentleman that wrote a book called It's Not Rocket Surgery. It's a book on testing stuff. And when he started teaching usability testing, he found out if you will test 5 people with slightly different backgrounds, you will get as good a statistically accurate result as if you tested 100 people. He said, until you get past 100 people, that's not valuable testing more than 5. So when we go and create our courses and just ship them, that's what we do. We create our whole course from A to B. It's like writing a book. I've written several books, and one of the things I've learned is some people will come back and say, you know what, that chapter, it was too long. You covered too much stuff that everybody knows. In that same chapter, I've had other people come back, that chapter was too short. You should have broken it up. It needed this and this information. And you find that type of stuff out when you actually put real learners, people who don't have a pre-knowledge of your topic, through your course. So what we need to do is learnability testing. And I looked, and that word's used, and I guess the modern rule is if it's been used a couple of years, it's a real word. So we go in here, and we'll create different units. Then we'll drill down into the units. And what I want you to see here, this is a video test because I wanted to see what would happen here. So here I have a video, and these are just 2 random videos I have in here at the moment. Or I have this video. And what this is my point is you could have different videos from different sources for this lesson. Normally, when you go through a lesson, you're only going to have one lesson. This isn't 2 lessons a student has to go through. The point of this is to actually have lesson A for this topic and lesson B for the topic to match only that lesson that people said, this is too broad, this is too short, teaching a bread class. Well, some people, if you're teaching a artisan bread class and sourdough breads, some people already know what sourdough is compared to regular yeast bread. For them, you cut a course, that video, without those details. They don't want to hear about it. For the others, they want that information. So you just for that lesson during the course, you put in the split content, the variable content, and you ask a question and you present the correct material to this individual student. When you do that, that's over here. Let's see. So that's how you make agile lesson content. You're making your content when it needs to be flexible. You're not creating a linear path. And the reason I talk about that linear path, remember I had a picture of Star Wars clones on the front of that course? Well, when you try to teach a linear path, it usually doesn't work out the way you hoped it would. And we all know what happens when you try and get clones to all shoot at the same shoot together. The more clones you have shooting, the less likely you are to hit your target. So that's why we want a little agility, because we don't want the record of the Star Wars clones. So come back here and we start playing. This is direct video file content. And this is just our first idea. We're going to be testing, getting feedback on this. So notice the kid right here in the white shirt in the foreground. They're watching a fellow student's work. So we'll play it a little further. So this is what you do. You just create mechanisms, and this is just a simple one to start with, that allows someone to actually give you feedback. Okay. Now they're focusing on their own work. Notice I can show the comments again. Play further, and I'm assuming you guys can see the video playing. And as you can see, he's putting the cap on his pen. Guess he considers that he's finished. And maybe I don't want this comment here, so I have the ability to delete it. Well, that's the type of thing. What I'm trying to do is just find a user interface that the student who's taking this lesson ahead of time can give me feedback on the videos, different comments, and we're going to create different lesson types. Some of the lesson types will be rich markup, just sort of like the slideshows. Same type thing, because it's done. Those are all done with Markdown, which works inside the course here too. And we'll go there later. We'll add in quizzes and stuff. But the goal is to get feedback. The number one thing we need in our online courses is not to ship knowledge because we're correct. You see, the problem is the goal isn't teaching. Teaching is a tool. It is a tool to transfer knowledge and understanding. The goal is learning, retention, and application. And that's what Robert was talking about with one of their new hires there. The goal is learning, retention, and application. If the goal were teaching, if that's what our goal was, we would be calling this Open Teaching Server, but it's called Open Learning Server. We need to begin with the end in mind. And to me, teaching is more about you than me as a teacher. Until you're learning, I'm trying to teach. Until you're learning, I'm not teaching. And there's not anything wrong with wanting to get paid for teaching. There's not anything wrong with wanting the ego for being a good teacher. But there is something wrong if that goal doesn't make a key to the whole thing, the students learning. And if we have multiple students, typically we want to increase the average that these students actually learn. And getting quick feedback, you need timely feedback, not just feedback. And when that feedback indicates that we should be doing agile lesson content with a variable lesson like that, that's when you do this. Not all the time, but the problem is I haven't seen any online software that has implemented this variability. Usually it's skip this lesson, skip that lesson, and you've got students playing hopscotch with our learning software. That's ridiculous. That's distracting to the students, and they're jumping around trying to figure out where should I be going instead of having their brain focus on the content. So, slightly biased there.
I think, John, if we had taken that course, and I would call it as a beta tester, and given the instructor feedback, he was a good instructor.
Yes.
If he listened to us, if multiple people told him the same thing, hopefully he would, he could have made that class way, way better.
I agree.
And he would have got word of mouth, which would have increased his sales and made him more money and increased his reputation speaking at conferences and whatever. I mean, I think it was a missed opportunity on their part.
My wife and I read a book. This is my turn to be good. I'm trying to not name the book or the author. But we read a book, and he's had 4 paths to choosing successful careers. And depending what your path was, you think as you're reading the book that you're going to be doing something different. But you spread out into 4 paths, and all the paths in the book converge back onto creating online learning. Like, oh my word. Just left me breathless. And I wrote a note to the author, and I asked him, what percentage of the people who follow your book are successful? And the author was honest with me. He says, I honestly have no idea. It's a good question. And I started asking this of other people who have these online things they offer. What percentage of people are successful? How do you tell if this person should take this course or if it's not a match for them? My father was, you could tell his influence was trickling through my mind. And I'm shocked how many people have no idea if what they create to make other people's success has any traction. What we're doing with Open Learning Server is we want to find a way to give instructors traction. But the reason we're telling people that agile lesson content, don't do the agile content unless your timely review says it's valuable. So don't do this unless this is pointing at it. If you don't have an indicator of a value, don't burn your time as a typical standard. Yes, there are exceptions, but you should get counsel before you split. So we're not saying waste your time. The last thing we're looking to do is, let's see, I'll make sure I have my wording right. As I've released courses, I had a course that was so successful in jQuery, It was taking one of these top learning sites, and they were doing really good, and I was in the top 5 of their courses within about a month and a half. And my commissions went up, cleared a little over 2,000. In most of their other courses they had produced internally, and then they changed the contract, which I'm okay with. It's their product, their platform. But what I found out is I couldn't package that course and bring it somewhere else. I didn't per se own it, but how could I package my course and deliver it to Udemy, or back then Lynda.Learning or Pluralsight? We don't have a way to export a course and then re-import it somewhere else. I mean, nowadays, you can take Word documents and load them in Google. So we understand the need for standard. The things that we use commonly should be portable, but they're not. So these 3 are my big gun items that I'm focusing on, because if you've got an online learning center, you guys were where I'm presenting, your guys were at University of Michigan. There we go. Did I get that right? Now I'm nervous.
Yes, that's correct.
It's like, okay, my brain locked up with panic there. It's like, okay. I said, don't want to be saying the Ann Arbor one. I'm not against the Ann Arbor one, but I wanted to say it correctly. Thank you. How many universities are there? Don't other universities create courses? Can they export their course so you can just pull it in as a standard package into your software?
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge number of offerings from top universities, and the portability question is an enormous problem. I mean, we here at Michigan, they force us into collaborative learning technologies, and it was a few years ago that they changed the technology, and the teachers all found that the courses that they had created with the old technology really had to be completely reworked in order to bring them into the new technology.
And that's my question. Why? I mean, that's got to be like one of the, I'm not saying it's simple to conquer, but it's a lot easier than sending an astronaut to the moon. Our universities study how to make plants grow better. We study electrical engineering. We study the new ways to write. All the technical stuff we do, conquering this beast should be simpler. So I thought, you know what? This is such a big win, but it's such a, you just don't walk around, hey, I created course portability. It doesn't give you creds. So what I looked at is, instead of looking at what this did for me and my name, I really went looking at how can we benefit the students. This actually, we'll find out how each of these items work. I may be wrong, but in my research, these were my top indicators. So in my software, I'm using something called Markdown. You guys have seen WYSIWYG editors online. I mean, is there anybody besides me who ever used WordPerfect before there was a graphical user interface on it?
Oh, sure.
Markdown is better than that. But that's the first indication, because we used to wrap stuff like that. And Wikipedia uses Markdown. SlideDev, this tool that I'm uses it. And believe it or not, Markdown is this strange thing. Unlike WordPress, where it waned away, Markdown is continuing to grow. That's kind of wild. I just want to give you just a couple of things so you can see it, but I want to tell you why I'm using Markdown. See this screen mode I have here? Well, what would happen if we went to light mode instead of dark mode? Isn't that interesting? So we go backwards here. Wait a minute. This whole slideshow still works, even though I changed the whole theme other than just the graphics look the same. So that's still working. So when you start adding markup with these WYSIWYG editors, people want the next tool and the next tool and the next tool. And what happens when we get certain things, it triggers our brains naturally to want something that isn't going to work the best for us. Do you know why Wikipedia uses Markdown, always have and have not changed? It's because their content, no matter what they do to their look and feel, works. And that's actually one of the secrets to Wikipedia's success. Who would have known? So with that, what happens is, we get to leave our footprint behind. Yes, that's what the photo is, because unlike WordPerfect that went away, Markdown is a nice, friendly language to do things in. So I want you to see, this is just a sampling of Markdown. This is 3 levels of headings and then just regular detail. And those render out like this. So you have a title, subtitle, a subtitle, or for you web developers, H1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
And bold, italic, link content, and a graphic. That's how they render out. So it's nothing difficult. There's only a few things because we keep from adding the things that'll mess people up. So for our server, this is what I'm using. This is more for the developers who are watching. I'm using Supabase. And the reason I'm using Supabase is because it does so much. Is there anybody who's in the session? I think Rick is pretty sure heard of this, the phrase low code or no code. What that means is it's not more lines of code that make something work. And even though I'm doing more code because it's how I'm doing my slideshow here, for other people, they wouldn't want to do this. They prefer to be using something like PowerPoint or Keynote because they don't want to do the coding. For me, I prefer to do this because it gives me more flexibility and I don't have to figure out the tools. Normally, I like the graphical user interface of things, but for slideshows, I prefer this. But that's, guess what? That's individual. So Supabase is low admin. I don't have to have a DevOps team and system administrators. It's in the cloud. I don't have to manage it. It has the database, the API, the authentication, the storage, the edge functions. They're all in there. And to my point here, there we go. It disappeared from me. Someone did that. Thank you. And we have, this is the Supabase site. And as you can see, they have all this in there. And they have really good prices, but you don't even have to pay to get started. You can create your whole project, get it working before you pay a dime. And have your live, and actually you can even do your basic server testing with that. That's just an incredible offering that they have. And they're sort of a competitor to Firebase is how they're known. So if you're familiar with Firebase, they do a lot of similar things. So my front end, I'm using Vue technology. I'm using the router so it runs as a single page app. And I'm using Pina to store the database. And guess what? For the PI and authentication, I tie that in with a Supabase thing, which is again lightening my work. Because what I want to do as this project grows, because it's an open source project, I had to select stuff that would help me scale without having to. This startup isn't backed by someone who said, look, I really like what you're doing. Here's $500,000, run with it. This is a bootstrap project I'm paying for. So part of what I had to do is find the right tools and solutions so I could grow Open Learning Server without having to grow venture capital investors before I can show what all we're doing and where they want to invest. And Vue Use, that's incredible project. TypeScript, I'm not using just standard JavaScript on this, so I'm planning on having a basic TypeScript course too to help people jump into TypeScript without all the confusion that some of the other paths are causing. Because TypeScript, like most stuff, can be learned, but it's a little bit, and most of you that know me have heard me use this phrase, who ever learned to drive in a clutch car? Those of us who are old enough remember it. Day one, everyone in the car with you gets whiplash. Day two, when you're pulling out, starting or stopping, you can have a car stall or a little jerkiness. Seems like day three, it's weird. It's like you just suddenly start to know what you're doing because your brain starts to wire it in. TypeScript, I think most of the people who are creating courses on it are creating the course so day three doesn't arrive till week or month three. I don't know why they make it difficult and hard like they do, but I'm suspicious it's because they don't have something like Open Learning Server to sit in front of their students to know where the student struggles are. So it's a blind spot for the teachers. And they know they have to make the whole course, so they make the whole thing the giant monolithic thing. So if there's a problem back in lesson 2 of unit 1 of their course that they've done all the way through their course, they're not going to rewrite the whole thing. But the information was validated from someone who's a technical expert in the careers, so we all go with it. And that's what we're used to for a lot of online learning. The technical knowledge is there. And you have people who want to teach, and then they fail, and what do? They quit. So here's a person full of knowledge with a nice community spirit who quits because they didn't have a tool that helped them deliver. And that's sad for me. So again, these are the things that are in it. And like I said, I wanted to show you some other stuff here. See this? This is actually the web page where I will be talking about my Open Learning Server. Oh, there we go. Get rid of that. So in PowerPoint, can you embed an actual web page right into your presentation? That doesn't happen very often. Or that's if you want it on the side. If you want, you can have it span the whole page and use it like this. And I thought, well, that's cool. I like that for this type of software. Or, you know, that other page over here when I was over here? Well, this is embedded right into the presentation, which I think is pretty wild that you can actually embed that page right into your presentation. And here you see you can also jump to any slide. So with that, that's the basics of what I'm doing. I would show more code if I thought we had more code people here, but isn't part of the goal of Open Learning Server to be able to speak to the audience that's in front of you? So that's exactly what I want to do. So I want to speak to the audience that's in front of us here, and I want to hear your feedback. I want to learn from you and see, not just tonight, but as you guys go through stuff and learning software that you think could be done better? Or you're like, well, I was learning and I was wanting this, but it didn't. I was expecting A and they delivered H and I wasn't even close to there. That type of thing. That's what I'm after, is I want to get more ideas, because as I move forward, as we complete this minimal viable level of the project, I want to know what we should focus on next. So go ahead and pick my brain, ask your questions.
John, I really like the way that you're building in, getting that instantaneous feedback. Question is, when you were showing the video of the young students in the class and
Yes.
the comments,
Mhm.
if you were doing that with a, say, 15 or 20 people watching that video and all of them providing comments, how does that do those comment threads get archived so that you can review them?
Yeah, the goal is to archive them, and because we're eating our own dog food, we're going to find out how the users want to experience that. Should we put down a thing so you can see everybody's comments? If you add a comment, do you want other people to see your comment? Do you not care about it? And if no one cares about that feature, well, we certainly don't want to not develop other features, putting a feature in that nobody cares about.
Right. Yeah, one of the one of the joys that I have in teaching, and this is teaching in person, I have not created any online content. One of the joys that I have is the direct interaction with the students. Like you said,
Yes.
you're not teaching unless the interactions you're having with your students are creating a learning situation for you as a teacher. And when you're in person with the students, you get all kinds of immediate feedback from them. If you're not getting through to them, they look like trout with their mouth hanging open and half asleep. And if you are getting through to them, you're getting interesting, insightful questions and
Right.
challenging questions.
And that's part of where I saw the pain point, because I've taught a lot of live classes before. And when you're online, you've got to give them the ability to interact with the stuff before you release it. And to be able, like on Udemy, they do something that I like. I just don't like when they do it. After the course is released, if you have a question, you can stop the video at that point and add a comment at that point. Similar to what basically I've seen them and others do this. That's what I'm doing. The difference is we're doing this before the course ships, so I can redo that video, because it may be more work for me to redo the video. But if I'm in unit 2 of 8 units and I have to redo something, that's easier than trying to redo all the rest of it, number one. And I don't want to produce 8 units of material that go out to less than 100 people if I've invested $10,000 of research and time into building something. I want it to benefit people in such a way that I get rewarded for helping them win. And I think that most other teachers would agree with that.
Yeah, I think so. It's kind of interesting. I've thought about, we have a number of courses that are basically lecture only. They're one-way courses. I call them one-way courses because you've got the instructor stands up in front of the course and spews out all of the information, and the students do their best to absorb it. And in a way, that's a lot like the no feedback online learning situation.
Yes.
And the feedback that the instructor gets is, how well did the students do on the midterm exam, and if there's quizzes or something like that. And then you have the discussion sections, which is more getting to the kind of commentary, the real-time commenting that you're looking at supporting. Unfortunately, here at the university, a lot of the discussion sections are run by graduate students, and the professors who are actually doing the lectures never actually get the feedback.
Plus, if they're graduate students, then these are people who now are subject experts, that's where the timely part I talked about comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're a subject expert, we forget the pain points. And classically put, my wife and I had a large family, and my wife will tell you that although women don't look forward to child labor, they don't vividly remember it either. So if you can forget child labor, there's a lot of other stuff we can forget. And we may choose stuff to remember that's negative, but we don't remember it all. So the most timely way to capture that is fresh.
Right.
And we don't want to help women freshly capture and remember child labor. I want everyone to know that's not what I'm referring to.
Yeah. The class that I mostly help with is a capstone laboratory class. It's a class where the students design a project, they fabricate it, and then they test it.
Sure.
And I work with them I'm the technical person who works with them in the laboratory, and that is just ultimately rewarding because I get that instantaneous feedback every time. Their stuff works or their stuff doesn't work, and they're disappointed, but they can still learn from it.
Right. Well, I had two big projects like that when I was in the Navy, my personal ones, because I'm creative by nature. It's compulsion. Some of us literally were creative by compulsion. One was, I noticed that we had this $850 basically circuit board that occasionally needed to be replaced in our trainers, because our flight simulators were built by Singer because they won the contract. And Singer Sewing Machine Company at that point was not really into electronics, plus the wires in a sewing machine. I don't know how they won the project, but they were learning, and we got to work on some of the early transition of Singer from just being a sewing machine company to some of the other stuff they were trying. And back then, branching wasn't a skill we really had in business. So my point is, not surprised that board cost $850, but I was curious. So I sourced out parts, and I found out that I could rebuild the board with someone just in their spare time for around 1/10 the price. It was less than $100. And reliability was just as good. And that's when I learned inside the Navy about institutional rules and government contracts. And my big savings didn't come to pass because we couldn't do it with a government contract. And the other time we had this routine where the hydraulics and the things, we had to test them once a month and grease them and do everything. And I was doing the math and doing the testing of our circuits, and I was like, come on, guys, this is crazy. Instead of taking 2 nights to do this for 2 crews on 8 simulators, I figured out how 1 crew could do it in 1 night in 4 hours. I proved the math, sent it up through. They approved it, and that one did change. So that one was gratifying. We got progress. They said we'd give, if it saved the Navy money. It was disappointing because they said because everybody's on staff and this one doesn't actually change any of our hard cost, I didn't get that, but I did get at least a strong thank you, and it did change the way we did stuff. And it was a lot more pleasant to do maintenance with that process. So, but when we have something like that, that's application. And when I loved teaching and doing that so much back then, that this is the funny side of the story. The poor guys who just finished the Navy prep school to become flight simulator technicians, TDs is the rating we call it, tradesmen, they would land and they had to spend their first 2 months when they came in groups with me going over what they just learned in A school because they thought I was better at teaching it than the instructors at the A school. So their first week there, they're really bummed about it, but then they found out they got that, and the guys were passing their test and advancing better than the guys at the other bases. They all of a sudden were okay with the pay raises and everything. They thought it was really cool. So I've had a passion for teaching and this type of stuff for a long time. This is just my season. So I'm trying to expand this and help other people to see some of these things about teaching. Teaching's not about the technology. Well, it is, but technology is a tool just like teaching is a tool. Learning is the objective. And you really have to learn to develop an empathy. Should we create a new word? Should we call this instruction quotient? We have emotional intelligence. So is this teaching intelligence? That's what we'll call it, right? Teaching intelligence. Might as well have fun with that one.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think you're onto something with putting energy into the foundation of building the course and building it in a way that is going to be portable. And I thank you for your attention in that area, because it is something that's been lacking.
There you go, Rick. There's my new buzzword. What's your TI? Rick knows that I have books and books up above me here. I've read Emotional Intelligence, Man's Search for Meaning, Good to Great, just a lot of books. So, and I plan to read more. And the way I put it to people, you've probably heard the phrase that leaders are readers. And I like to tell people, I said, well, make sure you catch that one way and not both ways, because readers aren't all leaders, because some readers are just, well, readers. But I believe a good leader has nothing to do with being in management, but hopefully anybody in management focuses on learning leadership, but leadership's everybody's responsibility. Along that same token, I happen to believe that teaching is everybody's responsibility. That doesn't mean they need to create a course, but hardly any of us can get through life without having someone that we cross that needs information we have. So I look at it more broad spectrum, and I think we definitely need schools and stuff that focus on it. But I think more of us need to get a grasp of what teaching is, because a lot of us end up being parents. A lot of us have someone at help that needs the knowledge we have. And being able to teach, just having that core fundamental skill, that's a high value. So that's what I have for my initial presentation.
Well, thank you, John. I think that sitting here, there's a disconnect sometimes between the student and the instructor, especially online. And what you're doing with this is you're completing the circle. And I think that's really important. Life is getting more complex, and we have to learn more. And if we have better learning, everybody's better off. America stays competitive and stays ahead.
Well, you know who Steve Blank and Bob Dorff are. They wrote the book,
Yep.
The Startup Owner's Manual. In that, they have the Startup Manifesto, and one of the things they teach in there is one of my conscious mindsets. There are no facts inside the building, so get outside. And with that, they also have the rule, fail early, fail often, pivot. Well, that's what this whole thing is. It's lean teaching. And it's the, should we call it the teacher's manifesto? It follows that same type of mindset, gleaning from what I learned there. Because if you do lean teaching, what if you're trying to teach a course that you thought you could teach, but you're not ready? Would you rather spend 2 to 3 months creating the course to discover that it flops? Or would you rather create 2 or 3 lessons and learn that I need to do something before I complete it? That it's just smart. Everyone wins with this type of a flow.
Yeah, Steve Blank, kind of, for people that don't know, he was a very successful, I think, 8-time entrepreneur, was a centimillionaire, and decided to stop starting companies and become a professor. And I think he teaches at Stanford, and then on the East Coast, he teaches at one of the Ivy League universities. I had a chance to meet him actually down at the University of Michigan in a meeting. He came and gave a presentation, and I got a chance to shake his hand and chat with him a little while. And I think what he's doing is going through the entire society. In fact, John, I'd actually tell you to reach out to the guy and tell him, hey, I'm doing lean teaching. It may be beneficial. You get him a chance to look at what you're doing, and he might give you some valuable advice.
And this is his book, if no one's seen it. It blew my mind, a book this big, nice, thick, full of information. It's got over 500 pages, and he only wanted $25 for it. Like, you know, good books, this thick, hardbound, $25. Then I realized, oh yes, he also, because he started businesses, he runs across a lot of entrepreneurs. He has them read this book before he invests. I'm sure this is sort of like his inroad.
Yeah, he was a noted angel investor out in Silicon Valley.
So that book helps him filter out who good investors are. Have you read my book? Do you even know what I want? You want money from me, but you haven't checked out my book? Come on.
Yeah, he's very big in get out of the building and talk to customers. And I think a lot of startups, you go with a vision. And what I've experienced is you need to find product market fit. You need to get your first 10 customers, and after that, your first 100. Most startups fail to get even 10 customers. And if you're talking to customers, you can just do a better job of finding product market fit and having a successful startup. You may still not make it, but your odds improve greatly. And it seems like such a simple observation, and yet, well, it eluded everybody until he brought it out.
Most of us feel like we're 95% sure of anything we lean into and create as a project. But here's the problem is there's no way to really know what percent sure you are. And that piece of doubt you have, it sits there and competes for your focus. When you get outside the building and prove things, or you do a course and you actually run it by students, as you're creating the next lesson, you're getting feedback. The students, oh, this works. That made so much sense. This made that explain that earlier. You start going through this, that is when you know that your class is working. And then you teach that class again, you go back over your notes. Oh, this time I'm going to mention that sooner. that type of stuff just changes the game, and we go forward convincing ourselves that we're sure when we have doubts that are clogging our mind from focusing on winning when we could have just got the question answered.
Right.
Who knew?
Has anybody got any other questions for John or comments?
Or in the words of Carol DeWitt, do you have any questions now or not yet?
I think it's not yet.
I love how she teaches people to have a positive attitude and not to limit yourself. Are you good at this? Not yet. That is so much a better answer than, no, I suck at it. Or, that's not the direction I'm going. It's the same type of thing as rest this. In fact, she's one of the authors I recommend teachers and people who are learning to lead read. So. And yes, my wife says that as I do this, I have to put a course up on teaching what I know about teaching, which isn't everything. And I also want feedback from students to say, well, I was in this circumstance and it didn't work for me. So I know not to teach it does.
Yeah, I think teachers are underappreciated in our system. And I've observed at the university level, I don't know if you agree with me, Bob, but I suspect you might. It seems like if you want to get ahead as a professor, an assistant professor, they grade you a lot heavier on the research you're doing and not on your teaching ability. And I've had professors that were great teachers that never got very far, never became full professors. And they didn't do as much, spend as much time on the research, not that it wasn't interesting to them, but they valued teaching more highly.
As Carol DeWitt says, that's a challenge we haven't conquered yet.
Yeah. They need
and I like her attitude, because when you say it that way, your mind more naturally starts asking how. And it sees things as challenges instead of obstacles.
Right.
Which is, those are good things. So like your new hire, has he done it? Not yet.
No, but I'm working on defining the project for him, so he's going to have a good project. And Rick, to your question, you know, students who are looking at starting their academic career at, you know, an undergraduate career, the college advisors at their high school are really doing them a disservice by not informing them that some universities are research universities first and teaching universities second, and other universities are the other way around. And what is it that you really want to get out of it? I mean, I'm making, you know, no bones about it. University of Michigan, it's a research university.
Yeah.
And we teach on the side. And you're absolutely right. If you're an assistant professor and you're up going for tenure, publish or perish and get your grants and get your proposals accepted, or you're not going to get tenure. And you can be voted teacher of the year by the students, and that's not going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and you can also be the most popular professor, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're the best professor. I went to Michigan State, and I had one professor that I was warned as a freshman. I mean, there was literally that to avoid her classes, and there was the graffiti in both the men and the women's bathrooms about her. And she was by far the best teacher I ever had. She pushed me, but at the end, she invited her students to dinner. I never had a professor do that. Went to her house and hung out with her, and you know, I rated her very highly. Let's put it that way. So She never would have won a popularity contest ever. But she was a working journalist, actually helped start a newspaper in Mexico, and a newspaper that won a Pulitzer Prize. So she had her hands in journalism as opposed to just being a professor, you know?
Right.
Well, no, as opposed to being a professor, you're a writer. So I'm going to tease in you for saying just. As I've started to blog more frequently, I've had some people who are better writers than me. That's one of those words they say, you can't say just every except for the exceptions. And it's like, this is going to be hard. Have you ever read Deep Work by Carl Newport?
No.
He's a research professor also, and he talks about the need to publish because that's the type of an institution he's a part of. And so I don't know which university he teaches at, but it would be similar. I'm going to guess it's not at yours because you guys haven't heard of him.
I don't know all the professors at Michigan State. It's been
No.
a long time since I graduated from there.
So thank you for letting me share my vision and give you a peek at my initial stuff. I mean, most of the pages can look like everyone else. When you play a video, it's going to look like everyone else. The difference I'm after is pre-measured impact. Post-measuring impact is too late.
Yeah, when you're developing, you're absolutely right. It has to be immediate.
So we will see, and if it catches on, who knows how far it is. So literally, my goal is, the mission is to positively disrupt online learning. And and I don't know if I mentioned this, I have literally talked to almost all of these, I did, big learning centers. They like what I'm doing, but none of them will take initiative on it. So they have more features than I do, but at the end of the day, I'm going to pay for courses that I know will help me put into practice and learn above whether I'm a part of a group. I mean, like being part of a group, but learning is my top goal. Above, do I get a badge? Is it gamified? I mean, that's who's against having fun, but learning, retention, and application. That's the goal. So.
Well, listen, thanks a lot, John. If anybody hasn't got any questions, we can stay on here, but we'll probably stop the recording, Nicholas.